Okay. Okay, we're all set.
All right, thank you. Good evening, committee. It is now 6 p.m. and the August 18th meeting of the CDA will please come to order. Patrick, would we have roll call, please?
Wayne Clark. He's nodding affirmatively. His mic is muted. Don Namer.
Here.
Alderman Weigel.
Here.
Alderman Haas.
Here.
Chris Sogstad.
Here.
And Jerry Motter.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Karen Gales here.
Oh, thank you, Karen. We
Okay.
have all members present.
Thank you. First item, we have a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting.
I move approval.
The second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes stand approved. Item 1, resolution to consider amendment number 1 to purchase a sales agreement by and between 6 Points West Dallas Apartments LLC and the Community Development Authority of City of West Dallas related to the development finance agreement north of National Avenue, Nona.
Matt, Mr. Chair, just for the record, there are no minutes that were provided. So if we can scrap that last vote.
I'm still happy to approve them.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, on number 1, Sean's going to handle this case, but we'll talk a little bit about open session, and then we'll talk more about the financing aspect that they're asking for in closed session.
In closed session, all right. You have the floor, Sean, or,
Thank you. Thank you. Yep, like John had said, we'll take some of this up in closed session, but the basics of it, this is an amendment for the area north of National Avenue. It's an amendment to the agreement on the West apartment building, which was a 177 unit apartment build out by the Mandel Group. It's obviously construction is complete. And according to the lender, it's been stabilized for at least 3 months, which then allows them to transition from construction financing to permanent financing. You know, for all intents and purposes, it's gone quite well. And, you know, according to Mandel, they've had, you know, a record lease up rate, 30 leases a month. Typically they get 12 per month on average. And they've been able to take advantage of the record low interest rates. So, you know, all those things combined have allowed them to actually do this about 1 year ahead of schedule. So it's all kind of good news on this. And we'll kind of go over the detailed numbers on what this looks like as they transition to permanent financing and the advantages to the CDA and such.
okay.
And Mr. Chair, question.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. This relates to this project, and that is, it's a resource question. Both the CDA and the Development Department have relied heavily on Peggy over the past for some really drilling down and deep understanding from a financial standpoint. Do we have a replacement in the city for Peggy, and who is it?
Currently, Chris Moen is handling that responsibilities. Chris has been involved in a lot with Peggy's involvement, but I also might mention that we have SB Freeman, who's a consulting firm out of Chicago, working with as well. So we're more than adequately covered with Chris Moen.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, then do you want to go right on to item number 2, Patrick?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
We'll also have Sean present this.
Oh, okay, thank you. Item 2, resolution to consider letter of intent between the Mandel Group and the Community Development Authority of the city of West Dallas for Phase 2 of the Market Development south of National Avenue, known as SONA. Sean, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is a proposed letter of intent between the city and Mandel Group for a portion of the area south of National Avenue that they would consider sort of phase 1 of their SONA development. So this basically, makes them more comfortable to continue to spend money on plans and all the things that go into planning a major project like this. We're thinking it's best now to recommend just kind of holding this item. There are a few details we'd like to get worked out and on the same page in regards to environmental and some shared parking issues they need to kind of square away on their end. Things are moving along really nicely, meeting with them quite often, and they've made a lot of progress over the last few weeks to months after kind of slow going. But before we recommend entering this LOI, we just want to get a little more comfortable on a couple of issues.
We'll be discussing this in closed session as well, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm aware of that, Mr. Steele. So is there any more questions regarding this, Sean, for item number 2? If not, we could go to item number 3. Not. All right, we'll go to item number 3. Resolution consider the 5th amendment to amend the redistricted development agreement between Whitnall Summit Company LLC and Whitnall Summit Development Corporation and the Community Development Authority of the City of West Dallas and First Ring Industrial Redevelopment Enterprises Incorporated.
Mr.
Steele?
Chair, on this item, Whitnall Summit currently owes the CDA about $770,000. They had just asked for that loan to be extended.
Yeah. Excuse me, just a second, Mr. Steele. Before we go any further, I'd like to excuse myself from this because I have some close ties with that company. And I'll let Mr. Clark take care of the meeting at this time.
All right, thank you. Proceed, whoever is speaking next.
Very good. This is John. Because of the virus, they have some different occupancy issues, and they're getting those resolved. And so we are agreeing to extend their lease for 48 payments. Then they'll be paid off. And the interest rate is 4.75, which is the same terms and conditions that we had previously. We're just giving them some more time. And that 4.75% interest is really good. I think the market would probably be 2.25 somewhere in there. So that's the purpose for this. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
So we were provided the amortization schedule. What about the amendment number 5, the development agreement? Where is that?
That development agreement approves the Exhibit A, the amortization schedule.
The agreement should have been sent. I know I saw it in Legistar. They're both there.
It's just a one-page agreement that just says
we're doing this.
We agree to the Exhibit A.
For the record, I went into the city legislative info center and found the message for that particular document. This record is currently unavailable.
Yeah, we do not know why. We will get that rectified in the morning.
All right.
It is a one-page document. It basically just references the attached Exhibit A.
So we should proceed to a motion on this resolution?
If you like, I could read you the agreement. I mean, it's pretty short.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, on July 14th, 2020, the West Dallas Common Council by resolution authorized and directed the Community Development Authority of the City of West Dallas to restructure the debt repayment schedule for the loan approval under file R2016-2078 to a new schedule as set forth in Exhibit A. to this amendment attached to the two and incorporated by reference. Now, for good and valid consideration, the various parties hereby agree as follows. Recital number 1, parties acknowledge that the recital set forth herein are accurate, true, and correct, and they are incorporated by reference. 2, the reconstructed loan balance and all payments of principal and interest herefore are set forth in Exhibit A. Number 3, effective of the amendment, except as modified by this amendment, the Summit Place Business Park amended and restated development agreement as amended as of November 30th, 2016 remains in full force and effect. Witness thereof, all the various parties and Richard G. Carlson have executed this amendment as set forth on the above written date.
Thank you, John. Is there a motion to move on this resolution?
I'll move approval of resolution item number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a second, Mr. Haas, and any discussion? Do we take this by roll call vote?
No, I don't think you have to anymore.
No, just,
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, and back to Mr. Motter.
just for the record, there's one abstained.
I'm sorry, is that Mr. Motter?
Yes, Mr. Clark, I just excused myself from voting. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have that in the record.
Yes.
So this does pass, and I now move the meeting back to the able hands of Mr. Motter.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We'll go to item 4, discussion relative to Lincoln Avenue West Tax Increment District, Lincoln Overpass financing. Patrick?
Mr. Chairman, you might recall at the last meeting, we talked about the possibility of working with the developer of the Holiday Inn Express to address the fencing that is on the overpass of Lincoln Avenue. And you can see the deteriorated condition it is in. And the request of the CDA was that I follow up with, staff would follow up with the DOT. And based on that investigation, and also possible infrastructure increases in budgets, et cetera, we learned that, as you can see here, the DOT has programmed the project mainly in 2026 to address the overpass. However, if they get budget increases for construction, there has been some discussion about increasing the road budgets or federal funding. They would move this project to 2023. That's an important date. If the fencing would be replaced, the deck project, reference would be, it would last, 25, 30 years. So the idea of putting money from our TIF into doing the fencing at this time is probably, at this point would be to wait to see if the DOT can address the fencing and the overpass and have everything addressed. Otherwise, it may not get addressed to 2026, but if they're willing to look at an earlier date based on funding as we receive from the DOT, and that was their suggestion, then I would recommend to the CDA that we would wait on, assisting with fencing or new fencing at the overpass.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Alderman Haas.
Yeah, I agree with Patrick, right? If the DOT is going to be replacing the bridge in 6 years, us spending money doesn't make sense on this.
I would agree. Do we need a motion?
No, this was just an update. You kind of held the topic last time, and I just wanted to provide an update and what our conclusions have been determined.
Yeah. And I would point out from our last meeting that it was Alderman Weigel who's on top of this. So good job, Marty.
Thank you. Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Alderman Weigel.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I think this is a wise idea also. And just for my edification, we would have probably replaced it as it is, but it's likely that the new fencing would be something much more decorative and less utilitarian. And it could possibly be in 2023, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So yeah, why would we bother? And I believe Alderman Roth brought up the fact that it's altogether possible that that damage was done by a motor vehicle accident, which might have included insurance, in which case the DOT either got the money to fix it and chose not to, or could have gotten some money to fix it. I mean, I can't imagine that was done by our snowplows. And so, I mean, and that's just not normal wear and tear either. So I agree with it. We should just let it go and see what the future brings.
I did not get any information relative to if there was an accident or anything like that, but obviously our findings here from the DOT would suggest that it'd be prudent to be patient.
Yeah, well, the general consensus is that we'll just hold off and see what happens in 2023. I think that's the wise decision to make on behalf of our committee here. Is any further discussion? If not, we'll go to the next item. Thank you. Item number 6, resolution approving the I jumped the gun there, sorry. Item 5, discussion relative to federal home fund commitment and allocation of program income for 2020 and 2021. Patrick.
Mr. Chair, West Allis is part of a home consortium. We get federal dollars around almost $300,000 on an annual basis to provide for creating affordable housing. We haven't been able to get the last few years of those funds because we're successful in actually making money off of the home loans that we have provided to properties, such as interest income or payoff of loans. So home funds are distributed by HUD through the consortium with Milwaukee County and Wauwatosa. What impacts us and the other entitlement communities here under the consortium is the fact that our program income has to be used first. And as the county is the manager of these funds, they have stated to us that if we don't obligate $150,000 of program income by the end of 2020, that most likely they will have to take our program income because they're having troubles being able to use their actual annual grant funds that they receive. We also have $400,756 of program income that needs to get obligated in 2021. This is either committed or have a project going. We're going to have a meeting with the county later this week to discuss this on a Zoom, but the idea here is that we need to utilize these funds here in the near future. Now we're looking at whether if these funds could be put into maybe the Mandel development or another apartment development of some sort. But with HUD rules on home funds, you have 2 years from commitment to complete the project. So there's a very relatively short time frame. So you pretty much have to be ready to go and have the project and then commit the funds in order to get the units online and committed. But I just wanted to draw this to your conclusion. And then item 6 is related to this in order to help us address this $150,000 that we need to get committed in 2020. I'll gladly answer any questions the authority may have.
No questions?
Patrick, or Mr. Chair, if I could.
Alderman Weigel.
Patrick, you mentioned something about using this money for a project in the 2nd district on 72nd Street.
Correct.
Is that off the table here, or is that still part of the mix?
No, that's still, it could be in the mix here, as right now our goal is just to get the 150,000 committed. And then we'll explore how we can either look at those, maybe some other lots in the community, such as those or some other ones or homes and deploy these funds. We held off until our call with the county that we have this Thursday. We might, with our program income, might be able to leverage some money from the county for additional investment or properties. So right now we're just trying to get 150,000. Otherwise we'd lose it. So, they're going to take it back and deploy it someplace in the county for some other activity. That's kind of the way the consortium agreement works. They actually provide grants at Milwaukee County, I believe, Wauwatosa to properties. So they're not getting the money back like we are. And we're just kind of a little bit different than these other cities and actually making money from these investments.
Well, keep up the good work then.
Yes.
West Allis has been more frugal.
Right.
All right. Any other questions? If not, we'll go to item number 6 then, Patrick. Item 6, resolution approving the selection of the lowest bidder, authorizing the executive director to enter into a new construction contract with Kuntz Quality Homes Incorporated for construction of a single-family home located at 9235 West National Avenue in the amount of $302,220. Patrick, you have the
Chairman?
floor.
You might recall, in 2019, we put out the bid, the construction of a single-family home at 9235 West National Avenue. And this is an example of the type of home that we have built. This home sold for $170,000 and appraised at $185,000. Under the home program, we have to build homes that are affordable, and that means sold to people who are at 80% or less of the county median income. The table here shows the income levels for households at that level. So one of the things when we build single family homes is we have to sell it at a price range that they can obtain financing to build it. So we sell it, it costs us $302,000 to build it, but we can only sell it for maybe $170,000 like the last home. We're recommending that we spoke with Coos Construction, and they are willing to honor the bid from last year. Just they're asking for up to a 20% contingency on that bid total, just because of the cost of materials. But with the $150,000 that we need to obligate for the county, this would be a great opportunity for the city to obligate those funds and get a new house built. And it'll cost, I know it's a significant amount in terms of a budget, but we checked with other communities and what they're spending, as well as Habitat for Humanity, and we are in line with those. So our recommendation is to go forward with this construction with a contingency, in addition to the 302 of at least 10%, and facilitate the construction of this single family home using home program income.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
thank you. Patrick, it strikes me that every home we build is more expensive. And now we're in a new range of over $300,000. It just seems out of line.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem high, but when we checked with other communities building in the city, one of the higher costs here with this house is that it is on National Avenue, and it's set back, and we had to put a driveway in as well as the garage, which is an increased length of a driveway. Usually when we're doing these, we're building off an alley. So there's an increased cost on this particular home of adding a driveway. And we did do research. We looked at other entities that were building homes, and other than having nonprofits doing the construction, if you're using private construction, the cost of materials and the build, these the costs were in line.
Mr. Chairman, I agreed with Wayne Clark, and that's why we pulled it off the agenda from going forward to try to figure out how we could do this better. And as we haven't had time to get to it, and now we're approaching a deadline of losing $150,000 or doing this project. And so discretion being the better part of valor, we decided to go forward and bring it to you for approval.
So, Chairman, this is Karen.
Karen,
Yeah, anecdotally, I am hearing building costs are ridiculous. And so I'm not surprised by that. Lumber is going up. I know of someone that's looking at building something, and they said they need to get their lumber before October. Otherwise, it's going to be another 10% increase. So it's really supply and demand. There's a lot of lumber that people can't find. Subcontractors, they can't find quality individuals. So it's really I guess a seller's market from that perspective. The contractors just have us. So, I mean, I hate to lose 150,000 by not doing this.
Right. Karen, I think you hit it right on the head. It is awfully hard to get anything done these days with the amount of contractors out there. They're all terribly busy. And I know it seems like a lot of money, and I agree with Mr. Clark. But if we're gonna get 150,000, we're gonna end up with another new house in the city, which I think will benefit the city in general. So my opinion is that I think we should move ahead with it. Although I do think it's kind of expensive, but we don't have much of a choice with what things are costing nowadays. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Weigel?
was this a 3-bedroom, bath and a half? You know?
Correct.
Okay, and 2-car garage,
I think it's a car and a half.
car and a half? Okay, I was just curious. Yeah, and I guess what would be the alternative if we weren't, if we were willing to let that 150 go, then we're gonna let the lot sit, and then we gotta mow it, and we gotta plow it. It's a corner, and we're gonna wait for the economy to turn worse for pricing to come down. If that's what's gonna happen, I don't, again, no crystal ball. I agree with, if it weren't for this 150 there, 150K, I'd say maybe wait, but I'm gonna go, yeah, let's move forward with this also. I'm gonna move approval. This is a resolution, correct?
Who was
Yes.
that moved to?
I will. Alderman Weigel.
Karen Gale will second.
All right, we have approval and second. Is there any further discussion?
One moment. Patrick, there will be a contingency. Is that an additional 20%?
Correct. I said, let's go with 10%, but
10%, whatever it is.
Will they accept the 10%?
I mean, if we start seeing overruns as they start drawing materials, I can bring it back to the authority.
And Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Alderman Haas.
Yeah, and just for clarification, this is not the corner lot. This is just a little
Oh,
bit
no.
west of the corner. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Correct,
Yeah, so this is not the flower shop. This is like
correct.
2 lots west. Okay, got it.
Shouldn't
But we have to
the,
remember, it's a highly visible part of our community, and so I think we do want to make sure there's something that's very nice there too.
Mr. Chair, shouldn't we spell out in this agreement the contingency, whether it's 10 or 20%, not wait for an overrun?
I think it's in the resolution, is it not, Patrick?
I believe so, yes.
I'm sorry, what did you?
Yes.
What was the point?
John asked if it was included in our resolution.
And is it 10 or 20%?
I believe when we wrote the resolution, we left that up to the CDA to determine if they wanted 10. I was recommending 10, but if you want to go 20 to be safe, that would be fine. That would increase the budget by 60,000.
I'd go with 10% myself.
Okay.
I agree with Mr. Clark. Let's go with the 10%. And if something happens, he can bring it back to us.
So Alderman Weigel, are you
Yeah.
okay as
Yep,
the,
I'm okay with 10%.
and
we
I'm
needed
the
a-
second, and I'm okay with the 10%.
All right. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
No opposed?
Yep.
Did I hear
Who
one
opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed? All
Yep.
right. Resolution passes, one objection. We'll go to item number 7, resolution to consider professional services sole source contract with Lucent Social Services to provide service coordination of a family self-sufficient program as part of the Housing Choice Voucher and Veterans Affairs Supporting Housing Program in the amount of $96,687. Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the voucher program, there's a HUD initiative to do family self-sufficiency coordination. What this is that we need to work with our participants to help them improve their personal situation, whether it's transportation to work, coordination, or education, or job skill training, or resume development. It's in connecting individuals to resources. HUD has been in recent calls saying, technically under our program, we're supposed to have 89 people enrolled in family self-sufficiency. And it hasn't been a goal, and we've been working on it this year, but with COVID, things slowed down, and we're able to go out and look for an entity that could provide these types of services, such as the case management and the coordination. It's a very extensive program in which you need to do case management, working with individuals, sitting down with them, and getting our voucher program participants. They have to agree to participate, and it provides an advantage for them. So our goal that we've worked with HUD is to get 25 individuals participating. And we went to Lutheran Social Services. There's not many entities that can provide these types of services, and they outlined a proposal to the authority to provide this kind of coordination. And this funding would be supported by, or the cost of this project would be supported by our Section 8 administrative admin fees. Each person that participates in our Section 8 program, we receive an admin fee that supports current staff and our cost to administer the Section 8 program. And we have an actual reserve of those funds of around $600,000. In order to get affiliated or get in standing here with the HUD relative to the family self-sufficiency movement, we're recommending that we work with Lutheran Social Services here in their proposal to provide these services. The other side of this is the city would have to hire an employee to provide this type of service and expand our housing department. But based on the services that the Lutheran Social Services, which is based here in West Allis, can provide, we're finding this to be a cost and benefit to our program.
The critical mass of this is that we're going to try to get these people off the Section 8 program. And the more income that they get, the less rent we have to pay, and we put that money into a fund for them to help them underwrite their future costs of buying a home. So there's an incentive for them to make more money.
Sort of like if they have lost their job here with the COVID pandemic, and they adjusted their income, and then all of a sudden they better themselves through this program. The difference in between the rent assistance they receive today and the future is put into a savings account for the participant.
All right,
Mr. Chair,
thank you. Mr. Clark.
Patrick, who's audited these numbers?
Each year, I don't remember if they're part of the city's single audit. Chris would have to answer that. But HUD monitors our program. We have monthly calls, and they are reviewing our financials, as well as we have to submit, it's called VMS data, to HUD on our participants. So we are very closely watched by HUD.
On this $97,000 program cost, has anyone from the city been able to drill down and look at these numbers?
We've looked at that, Mr. Clark. HUD has given us about $79,000 to do this project. We think that the Lutheran Social Services is going to do that for the first year. They're going to charge a higher fee because they got to get set up to do this. And we'll probably renew this, and then we think the costs are going to come down. But we have like a $600,000 surplus that we've accumulated, call it profit, in our Section 8 program. Just as a point of reference, Milwaukee County has even a smaller housing program than we do, and the county puts in about $300,000 a year in property taxes to help them manage it. But we've managed it very successfully and very, very profitably. But so this is a higher cost, but it's not substantially higher, and they don't know. They're doing a similar program with the Milwaukee Housing Authority, so they got some experience. So we anticipate to see these costs come down.
Mr. Stiebel, have we worked with Lutheran Social Services before?
No, we have not, but we searched around for other outside agencies to do this. We thought about taking it in-house, but we thought, let's try to see if we could find a better place to outsource it before we do that. And Lutheran Social Services came up to be the best proposal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Alderman Weigel.
question for John. So this is essentially one FTE. Is that what we're talking about here? One full-time employee, or are they gonna do it with?
Yes.
That is correct. Well, it's probably equivalent to that in maybe 1.5.
Oh, okay. So and they're gonna hire somebody, or they already have staff and they're already doing this in other communities?
They,
They're going to manage it themselves.
yes.
Whether they hire staff
Yeah, I
specifically,
guess we don't.
or they reassign staff and hire new staff to do other things, that's up to them as to how they staff it.
Yeah, I guess we don't.
We'll be monitoring how they're doing this.
Mr. Chair, this is Chris Mullen.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add a little bit to the conversation. I think the contract with Lutheran Social Services would be in lieu of the city hiring staff to administer that. So HUD provided funding for it. And I think the question to the city was to find the best way to provide this service. The expectation is that the city provides this as a part of its housing assistance program. I think the city has looked at hiring someone on staff to do it, but a lot of what the task is it's really case management with the participants and following up with them of, kind of like Patrick said, resume development or things like that. So it's not something we really have in our wheelhouse as a city right now in terms of providing that type of service. You know, our housing office right now provides the vouchers and things like that, but it's much more of a case management type of service.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Chris, as you've looked at this proposed budget, does it seem reasonable to you?
I can't say that I've looked into the details of the budget, but I think when I look at the city's ability to do it on its own, it's just not a skill set that I see that we have currently. So I'm not sure where else we can go and find that skill set to do that program. It's kind of a unique program. So Lutheran Social Services at least has done a program similarly, I think, with the City of Milwaukee Housing Authority. So I think that's the expertise we were looking for. And it is entirely funded by that grant program.
I would agree that going to the outside is the way to go.
The the Milwaukee Housing Authority does this self-sufficiency program in-house. They have another program very similar to this that they've hired Lutheran Social Services for. That's why we decided to take a look at, we looked at a number of other agencies, but since Lutheran Social Services already has experience in a very similar program, that's why we selected them and recommend them for your consideration.
I'd move approval.
Okay,
And I'll second.
it's been moved for approval and second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
what's the what's the volume component of the contract? Did I see it's for 25 residents?
Well, so
That's the goal that HUD set for the money that they provided. They said for what they give us, 79,000, 70,000.
yes,
They said that should be sufficient to do 25 participants. If they could do more, then that's even better yet. But that's the national benchmark is 25 participants for 75,000 or whatever it is.
What's our contract going to require?
25,
25?
yes.
Thank you.
It's a little more than what HUD's providing us, but we have the cash available and we need to get this program started.
Are there any other questions regarding this item? I concur. I think it would be better to go with social services, Lutheran Social Services, to try to hire somebody our own, especially for this startup program here. So are there any further questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, no opposed. Resolution passes. Do you want us to go into closed session in regards to the items 1, 2, and 3?
I don't think there's a closed session on our agenda.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, there is.
Where?
There's attachment right after item number 7.
We
Mr.
could do
Steele?
these item D, Mr. Chair, really quick, and then we can go into closed session.
All right, thank you. We'll go to item D, consideration relative to the report on redevelopment initiatives. Patrick, you have the floor.
I'll take this, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Steele.
I think we've talked about the Pioneer development around 81st and 2nd and National Avenue. This group is still going forward to try to put this condominium project together. One of the issues is ultimately they're asking us to deed Railroad Park to the project so they can have more land mass. And what they would do with that land is to put kind of a gazebo type feature on there. I think you can see it in the first 2 photos. And so it would enhance the part of their development. I'm sure they'll be asking for a TIF, but we're still a ways to go yet before we get there. It's got some environmental issues, underground storage tanks that they got to deal with. So this isn't a done deal yet, but we just want to bring it to your attention that it's still being worked on.
Item C is just an update on UHS. They hit a milestone of having all their cement foundations put in, and now they are starting to erect the steel at the UHS. And I can't remember the name that they provided to the hospital, but I'm thinking it's Granite Hills Hospital.
Yes, it is Granite Hills.
Yeah, Patrick or John, do you know where they got that from? I know they were asking around for some local connection for a name.
I called them and asked them, where did you come up with that name? And apparently Wisconsin is noted as a granite state, which I was unaware of. And apparently Wisconsin has some hills, which I do.
There you go.
As I mentioned to them, UHS, that there's not a lot of hills in West Dallas, but fine. If that's what your focus group came up with, I could have thought of better names, but it's your hospital and it's not obnoxious. I was just surprised at the name as well. But that's what they told me. Another thing we just want to mention is that South 70th Street, the buildings are completely down now. They started putting in stormwater for the hotel. And on the left of this site plan is a conceptual park plan for their proposed multifamily development. And all this stuff is still in flux. It's still being negotiated. If you have any questions about the status, we would be glad to answer that.
Yes, I have a question. Given the status of the hotel industry, the hospitality industry, how is Cobalt doing with financing this particular hotel?
They're doing like any developer does. They've got, they had one bank that was willing to make the loan, and now they're out there shopping for other banks that will give them a better deal.
So far, there's no financing.
That's correct. They don't have to technically start it till next year. So they're still a bit ahead of schedule.
Although they are continuing to move forward with the gauge.
Yes.
Across the street.
I was by the other day, yesterday, and they got the balcony pretty much up. So it's looking pretty sharp.
Good.
Any other questions? Mr. Steele, as long what's developing on 116th and Morgan out there?
We'll get that in just a minute. We'll go back to the last one. I just want to bring up to Festival Foods is getting closer to Pick and Say being put back into productive reuse. And this is just a rendering of what they're proposing. And this is the east side of the building. And then on 160th and Morgan, I'll have our clerical staff send out an email to all of you tomorrow. There's a little summary that I'd asked the consultant to put together, but it's looking pretty good in that it's not as heavily contaminated as a lot of people had as mentioned over the years, the west, don't worry about all the graphics, but those are soil borings and ground monitoring wells. And the west side of it is more impacted than the other. We could build just about anything on that except single family homes because it is contaminated. It's got PAHs and minor issues. But it could be a single family condominiums like they're building to the south. And that's what this slide here shows that we talked about before. If we were to build single family condos like they did in Greenfield, that's the kind of revenue that could be potentially generated. Or it could be for industrial use, it could be multifamily, it could be a lot of uses. The big issue I wanted to bring up is that the reports, the investigations to date have continued to be positive, and we will need some capping on that, but building footprints and parking lots can be part of the cap, otherwise a foot to foot and a half of dirt in green space areas. So it's a fairly developable parcel, and it could be ready for development in about 6 to 8 months. Different reports need to be done. Another round of sampling has to be done. And then we'll need 2 more rounds of sampling of groundwater. And then we'll need a site plan of what's going to be built. And then it could be built within 6 to 8 months, or probably 8 to 10 months, probably.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Stiebel and or the alderman, at one time, for a period of time, many months, there was always the conflict between this location for potential housing and the city yards. Where does that issue stand?
I think it's best just to say that we're still looking at all those options. Obviously, before this could be used for a development site, another site would have to be provided.
But the fact that you're moving ahead and looking at this for development suggests that you and the city fathers are in alignment.
We are trying to find out if this site is developable. And the answer is yes. And now the city fathers and mothers will begin exploring what to do.
Thank you. I'm sorry for forgetting the mothers. Well, at least the fact that this is moving ahead, maybe my name can be taken off the chopping block of ridicule after 10 years of talking about it.
Well, progress is being made, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. One other question regarding Highway 100. What's going into the former Blaze Pizza site?
I think it's like a Sprint or something like that. A telephone service company.
Major renovation to a recently renovated building.
It's a beautiful building.
It is.
And I think one of the last things we want to bring up is the old Expert Auto site is being hopefully developed. Milwaukee County will be taking this up in September, as well as the Common Council. And we've already spent about a $250,000 to demolish the building and through TIF, and then now we'll be providing a $225,000 forgivable loan using CDB funds to this dentist developer to build this 2-story medical office building, which I think will be a great addition to that neighborhood.
Could we take a quick peek at the South 101st Street item F? One time, not too many months ago, there was talk about Cobalt Partners putting in a project that would run from National Avenue up to the new Holiday Inn. Where does that project stand?
We're still exploring that, but it's only in the very preliminary exploration stage. It doesn't look too promising, but we're continuing to look at options.
And Cobalt controls most of that property, right?
He has some of that property that he owns.
Two recently sold, and another one is up for auction.
Oh,
The Lincoln 1 and Lincoln 2, I believe, sold for $10 million. And then the third one I received a postcard on it that it's going up for auction.
thank you.
We also want to mention that
Questions?
the former Alice Chalmers employment office building that was going to be torn down for a Jiffy Lube is getting closer to being renovated for the what's the name of the restaurant, Patrick?
The reunion. The reunion.
So that'd be a nice $2 million development in that neighborhood.
That's the very building where my wife Agnes started her Alice Chalmers career decades ago.
So hopefully soon you can take her there for dinner.
Mr. Chair, if I could add something on this topic.
Go ahead, Alderman Weigel.
I would like to say, as an elected official and property owner and business owner and resident of the city, this is an example of what I think we've been, and when I say we, I don't mean me, because obviously the CDA previous incarnations had a major decision here to make on what to do with this property. As Mr. Stiebel mentioned, there was a chance where this was going to get torn down and made into a Jiffy Lube. And this is precisely the kind of thing that I'm very glad to see happen, that we were willing to invest in it, spend some time on it and some money, because this is the kind of thing that's going to help support those nice apartments in the neighborhood and a revitalization of that neighborhood. So this is a pat on the back for our staff and previous CDAs and previous electeds. So thank you to everybody for this.
All right, thank you, Alderman Weigel. Are there any other questions regarding to considerations relevant to what we're talking about here for Mr. Stiebel or Patrick? If not, Patrick, we'll go into closed session. The community committee may convene in closed session prudent to provide provisions of section 1985/1/E of the state of the state. Wait, I lost my place here. It's kind of dark. Statute for the purpose of deliberating and investing in public funds for whenever competitive bargaining reasons require a closed session. The committee may convene in open sessions after completion of the closed session of consideration for the balance of the agenda. Can I have a vote for closed session, please?
I think we have to take a roll call vote on this. Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Karen Gale,
Yes.
Christopher Sogstad,
Yes.
Donald Namer,
Yes.
Alderman Haas,
Yes.
Alderman Weigel,
Yes.
Jerry Motter.
Yes,
All voted unanimous for closed session.
we are now in closed session.
Just a
Sean?
second, Sean. Do
Just
you want-
wait, we gotta turn off the live stream.